And we are continuing with our Building Thinking Classrooms Now What Summit. And we are going to venture into territory I know so little about. And so we are in very capable hands here with Morgan Mason. Morgan, you're going to talk today about early literacy, looking at kindergarten through second graders and their phonemic awareness and phonics. So I'm just going to not say anything because I don't know a whole lot. And so I'm excited to learn with you today. So thank you for guiding us through this session.
Yeah, thank you so much for that lovely introduction. Like Marty mentioned, I am Morgan Mason, and I am one of the professional learning specialists here at Keep Indiana Learning. And my focus is specifically in early literacy. But my hope here today is no matter who's watching, whether you teach kindergarten or 5th or 6th grade, that you'll be able to take away something from what we discuss. So my session is called Building Foundations for Success, the Science of Reading and Thinking Classrooms. So many of you, I'm sure that are watching, attended the BTCC conference a couple of weeks ago. And it has been really fun for me as I planned the session to go from the conference and then think about it from more of an early literacy lens. And how can we take some of these ideas where we focused a lot on math and the different grade levels for math, and then apply it to that early literacy classroom. So I have 2 learning goals for us today. I know that we have such a short amount of time together, but hopefully you will take something away that you'd like to either try in your classroom, or if nothing else, I hope that this inspires you to reflect on your own practice and what you can do differently or modify or add to your classroom. So the first learning goal is to increase understanding of how the science of reading can support practices of thinking classrooms. And the second learning goal is to apply some of the strategies and ideas from this session to your early literacy classroom. All right, so we're going to jump in with just a quick overview of the science of reading. Those of you watching, you know that the science of reading is a hot topic right now, and everyone, school leaders, teachers, districts are trying to figure out what this means for them. So the science of reading is a vast interdisciplinary body of scientifically based research about reading and issues related to reading and writing. The research is best used to inform effective instruction. So it's not a curriculum. It's not something that you have to throw out everything you've done before and adopt this. It's how can we inform effective instruction better using what we know now. Now, I want to note that reading does not begin or end with phonics instruction. It is one piece of the puzzle, one of those 5 pillars, which we'll get into in just a second. And there are many interpretations of the knowledge and research that we have. So I'm saying all that to say that this is just one little piece. The 5 pillars of the science of reading are phonemic awareness, phonics, fluency, vocabulary, and then comprehension. Today, we are just going to be focusing on phonemic awareness and phonics. And again, that's not the end all be all, but it is an important piece of the puzzle. And it has been really interesting to think about how that explicit instruction that's needed in phonics and phonemic awareness can also be applied to a thinking classroom. So many of you have already read the Building Thinking Classrooms book, I'm sure. Read, listened to, maybe even applied a lot of the practices to what you're doing already. But just a quick overview from the book, if you have not, or if it's been a while since you've read it. The book is made up of 14 practices. Today we are going to just dive into 3 of those. The first 3 chapters of the book. If we have time at the end, I may touch on one more, but I think that the first 3 could really change the way that you are thinking about how you're teaching early literacy in your classroom. So those first 3 tasks are or those first three practices, I apologize, are tasks, collaboration, and where students are working. All right, so phonics instruction teaches critical thinking skills. And I wanted to add this slide because I think it's important as we think about developing thinking classrooms where our students are thinking, that we talk about critical thinking skills. So I think that a common misconception with phonics is that if you're teaching phonics, you're teaching rote memorization. I think that is not true. I think that there is, yes, we need explicit instruction when it comes to phonics, but a focus on phonics actually helps students learn formal logic or critical thinking more quickly, more effectively, and at an earlier age for a couple different reasons. So phonics defines a small and relatively well-defined environment in which a young mind can comfortably operate without being overwhelmed by a large number of possibilities. So think about all of those rules that you are teaching kids, and they are applying to their learning as they learn to read and kind of navigate that world. That is helping them develop their critical thinking skills. The logic lessons of phonics are taught by example during the learning and the application of phonetic rules. So again, those rules are helping them apply some of those critical thinking skills. And decoding and encoding are well-controlled logical operations encompassing many concepts that facilitate the student's future understanding of more advanced concepts. So when I was exploring and researching this further and kind of trying to wrap my head around this, I read an article where they talked about two really important skills when it comes to critical thinking. They talked about deduction, and then they talked about inferencing. So deduction is arriving at the correct answer through the successive application of known rules. When students are decoding, they are using that skill of deduction. And then with inferencing, the definition of inferencing is where one makes reliable assumptions about large numbers of things based on a knowledge of just a few similar things. So with inferencing, when they are encoding, they are applying that skill of inferencing. All right, so I wanted to give you an example of what that could actually look like in your early literacy classroom. So here is a phonemic awareness activity turned into a thinking task. And the goal here, and I hope what you take away from this, is that we are just wanting to put the thinking back on the children. We want to put it on our students. We want them to be thinking about, okay, how can I apply what my teacher just taught to other areas of my learning? So in this example, the teacher says to the students, when we read words, we say the sounds and blend them together. I will say 3 sounds and you will blend the sounds into a word. So in this example, this task, she is having her students activating their prior knowledge. This is a skill that they had been taught before. They are reviewing it now and they are applying what they learned previously to what she's asking. The next thing the teacher is going to ask then is, do you hear a short or long vowel sound in that word? Again, prior knowledge. This is something that they had been taught before, that they already have had knowledge of, but it's an extension. She's not just giving them the short or long vowels. She's having them think about, okay, this is the word I've been given. I'm going to identify now if it's a short or a long vowel being used. So now, in order to get it to be more of a thinking task, the teacher is going to say, good, this time I will give you the word and you will segment the word into sounds. So she's asking the students to do something without necessarily telling them how to do it. Now, they have the skills to do it based on what they have done in the past, but they have not done that specific activity before. So that is a very simple way to just turn a task into more of a thinking task by putting the work back on the students. Hey, I've given you this information. Now you're going to apply it in a new way. All right, the next practice that we are going to discuss is collaboration. So collaborative groups in a thinking classroom. We know that students are not going to learn effectively if they are just sitting and getting information. We know that there is so much value in student collaboration and it has a powerful impact on student learning. So in the book, Building Thinking Classrooms, they talk about this quite a bit. And some of the things that they talk about is knowledge mobility. So being able to borrow ideas from classmates, being able to compare answers to classmates, and debating solutions. I think that there is so much value in that conversation piece between students, being able to go back and forth. Oh, I got this answer. Oh, I thought it was this. Let's talk about it. We're also going to talk more on the next slide about visibly random groupings. But that is a method of randomization that tells students what group they are in and where they're going to go. So I think that there's a couple ideas that when I read the book and then as I was exploring and preparing for this session, that makes it very easy to visibly, randomly group students. You could use playing cards, you could use popsicle sticks, you could use a question about something they have in common. But the thing that I want to note, especially for these early grades, for grades K through 2, is that the optimal group size that is suggested in the book is 2 students. That is going to get the most bang for your buck when it comes to working with groups. That's not to say that you can't create larger groups, especially as you go throughout the year, but the optimal group size is 2 students. So the goal with this random grouping and this collaboration is for the students to see that you are creating a random group, that you haven't planned already who you're going to work with and strategized, okay, I'm going to put this student that's really strong with this student that's struggling a little bit more. They need to be able to see that it was randomly selected, and this is stressed in the book as well as an important part of this random grouping. All right, so when could these groups be used? There are many, many, many different ways that this could be used in a thinking classroom, especially when you are working on phonics or phonemic awareness. But I just want to talk about one example today that I'm sure many of you, especially in the early kindergarten, first grade classrooms, are already doing. So when could this be used? To practice and apply a new skill that has been learned. So the example that I'm going to give is articulatory gestures. So having students practice and notice how sounds are actually made. So articulatory gestures, and the reason to practice this is to provide students a chance to explore how their mouths, lips, tongue, vocal cords, and airflow are used to make different phonemes. Students need to not just hear how it sounds, but to see and feel how it sounds. So what better way to do that than to partner up and actually see someone else doing the same thing that you are, kind of like a mirror. Now, when I was thinking about this, I think it could be done a lot of different ways, but if I was going to be doing it in my classroom, I would probably start by still partnering students up in those visibly random groups of 2, but giving them a mirror to start so that they can see their own mouths and faces moving to create the different phonemes. Then they'd have an opportunity to do that with a partner. So they could face each other, they could do the sounds back and forth to each other so that they can see how someone else makes their mouth look or their lips look or their tongue move when creating the phonemes. Now, I think the most important part of this visibly random grouping that is going to be beneficial for this activity is giving them the opportunity to vocalize the observations that they have of all of those things that I listed and to discuss what is happening, specifically what they are seeing and feeling. Because especially in those early grades, I loved as a first grade teacher, you just never know what they're going to come up with. And they may come up with a different way to describe something than you as the teacher could have ever thought of. And so giving them the opportunity to kind of go back and forth with another person is going to be great for that development of that skill and them getting familiar with the different phonemes and what they look like, what they feel like, and then how they sound. All right, so the final practice that we're going to talk about is where students are working in a thinking classroom. So an optimal way to promote thinking is to get students out of their desks and standing. We know, like I said earlier, that in order to keep students engaged, sitting and getting a bunch of information from their desk is not the way to do it. So one of the things that is discussed in the book is vertical non-permanent surfaces, such as whiteboards, blackboards, or windows. Now, I think it's important to note that non-permanent promotes students' risk-taking. They're going to feel a lot more comfortable to make a mistake and to explore deeper thinking if they know, oh, I can just erase that and do it again. A vertical space or a vertical surface prevents disengagement. So they're up, they're out of their seats, they are standing next to a vertical surface, and they are engaging with another person while doing their work. So how does this translate in an early literacy classroom when students are decoding or encoding? Oops. So here's a strategy for going vertical that you could try in your classroom. You could practice and apply a new phonics skill, similar to what we talked about with the visibly random groupings, but you could use an activity called graffiti. So graffiti is similar to a gallery walk where it has you up and moving, but essentially what you're going to do is you're going to take large sheets of paper or chart paper, place them all on the walls of the classroom. Students then write their responses. They can draw pictures or record their thoughts on the given topic on the graffiti wall. And we've all seen graffiti before. It's messy, it's fun, it's colorful. So for this example, I was thinking about how you could do this when teaching L blends. So there could be a different piece of chart paper on different sides of the room for different L blends. You could have a BL, a CL, and then what you'd have your students do is, okay, we've been taught this information, we've been given explicit instruction on it. Now it's our turn to think. So we are going to go out and actually come up with some words that would go on the BL list, or write a sentence using one of the words from the CL blend list. And I like this too because you can reach students of all levels. Students can write their responses if that's what they are ready for, or they could draw a picture or record their thoughts in another way. So it doesn't limit them to just sitting in their desk with a paper or a worksheet that they're filling out. It gives them the opportunity to share their responses in a way that works best for them. I think it's also important to note that that collaboration piece is going to be there as well. They're working in that visibly random grouping again, and so it gives them a thought partner in this activity. All right, so this is a lot of questions. I'm hoping that you can take a picture of this slide and take it with you, and it gives you a chance to reflect on your own practice. I think that as I was researching and preparing and thinking about this session, these are the questions that really stuck out to me if I was still in the classroom, of things that I would be taking and thinking about as I go into this next school year. And I apply some of these ideas, maybe take some of these strategies, all of those good things. And yeah, so I hope that these questions are helpful to you as you go into this next school year and apply some of the ideas of the science of reading that everyone is kind of taking and making their own right now, and then also applying what has been shared in building thinking classrooms and some of the practices and ideas there. So I will leave you with this quote from our author. If we want our students to think, we need to give them something to think about. So thank you for participating today. Thank you for joining me. Hopefully, again, you were able to leave with something to try in your classroom, or it's given you inspiration to reflect on your own practice and think about ways that you can create more of a thinking classroom while still supporting the research and the findings of the science of reading and how phonics and phonemic awareness are taught. So thank you again, and have a great